Just wanted to remind everyone that I'm not a doctor, counselor, or any other medical professional. Information on this video is not meant to be interpreted as medical advice. I'm simply sharing my own experiences in my grief journey. If you feel that your needs are beyond the scope of the informational content of this video, please seek medical advice from your doctor to discuss treatments or medications that may be available to you. Also, if you're having thoughts or feelings of self-harm or suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 800-273-8255. Hi everybody, my name's Laurie, aka Leo. All my friends and family call me Leo, so you can call me Leo too. I'm otherwise known as One Happy Widow. I'm here to create a channel that will help grieving widows, widowed people, widowers, people who've lost a spouse, significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, partner, life partner. The loss is all the same no matter what you call it. I'm hoping that I'll be able to create some videos that will motivate you and encourage you to know that you can make yourself a happy life too, just as I have. So I want to go ahead and introduce myself to you and let you know where the name of this channel came about and how it is that I came to be in the position that I am. So this is just going to be a little intro about me today and a little bit more about the channel, the blog, and where I hope to take this, and hopefully you'll find some value in it. So you might be wondering why I chose the name One Happy Widow. When we think about the word widow, what kind of images come to mind? I think about the old lady in the Tweety Bird cartoons who sits in front of her fireplace and throws her piles of money into the fireplace and uses them to keep warm. I think about Jackie Kennedy in the black dress with the solemn face and the black veil. Sad connotations always come up when you talk about the word widow. And so to put the word happy in front of that, it does sound kind of strange. So you might be wondering, why would you call yourself that? How can you be a widow and be happy? I can honestly say at this point in my life that I am a happy person who happens to be widowed. So that's where the name came from. And I'm hoping that wherever you are in the grieving process, that you can also find your way through this journey towards happiness. It's not a destination. It's the journey, truly. I'm not there. I'm not done. I won't be done until I'm dead. I can say that I am in that process of grieving where I'm a happy person that has sad days, not a sad person who has happy days or no happy days. And I'm hoping that I can encourage you to give yourself permission to do the same thing. I really had to do that for myself. I had to give myself permission to be happy and to feel happiness and to feel joy and to laugh again. And it took a little while before I even started to be able to think that way. So as one happy widow myself, I did lose my husband of 17 years in June of 2017. It was very sad. It was a sad day. It was a sad moment. It was a sad period of time in my life. My husband had a terminal illness, and that's the details of all that I can lay out in another video and kind of tell you about my journey leading up to that point. Not every video is going to be tear-jerking and sad and sobby, but that one will probably bring a few tears. But, you know, I'll go through those details at some point later on. Leading up to that point, that was a really sad, hard time. The moments and days after that, really tough. Really hard. And I did grieve, and I was very sad. And I didn't even think about being happy at that time. So I definitely have been there. If you're in the depths of despair right now in your grieving process, I've been there. And if you've lost a loved one like we have, you have probably been there too, and you may be there right now. So I did go through those moments where I was really sad, and I was grieving every day, every moment. But I did not want the term widow to define me. And I didn't want my whole life and identity to be wrapped up in the person who lost her husband. And at one point I just got tired. I got tired of grieving. I got tired of being sad all the time. Who wants to be sad all the time? Nobody wants to be in that position. So I finally gave myself permission to feel happy. I didn't just snap out of it overnight. It was a process. There was so many things that went on between that moment that we found out about his illness until where I am today. I'm still on that journey. And it definitely was not something that happened overnight, but gradually, I made a few changes in my life, and I had to change my way of thinking and my way of seeing the world and my way of seeing myself and the way of spending time with my children. And eventually I had fewer sad days and more happy days. And so now I'm to that point where I have more happy days than sad days. Doesn't mean I am happy all the time. I tried to make this video 3 times. This intro video, I tried to make this video 3 times, but every time I sat down to make it, I had a sad day. I was having a bad day, or I had a fight with my husband. I am remarried now, and so it was really tough for me to try to, carve out a time or a day where I felt happy, because I didn't want to be a hypocrite and talk about being happy while I was sad and I'd been crying all day. So it took me a few tries to be able to even get here to talk about how I had transformed my grieving process into being a happy person. A lot of what we do through our grieving process has to do with what other people might think of us. If we never got out of the bed and we stopped taking care of ourselves and we were crying and sad all the time, what would other people think? Eventually, people would stop wanting to be around us because we are not fun to be around. And so I started thinking about that too. Well, no wonder nobody wants to spend any time with me. I'm depressed all the time. I'm sad all the time. I'm crying all the time. I'm talking about sad things all the time. And so I thought about, what would my kids think? What would my coworkers think? What would my friends think and family think if I just stayed in bed and cried all the time and was sad? On the other hand, the first time I laughed after my husband passed away, I instantly felt guilty and felt like, oh gosh, what are people going to think? They're going to think, how can she be over there smiling and laughing? Her husband died. So it's really tough to kind of reconcile what you're feeling inside to what other people might be thinking about you. And we really shouldn't worry about what other people think about us, but we're humans and we do that. And so that does play a part in our healing process and our grieving process. So our friends, our family, people who know us, they want us to move on. They might even tell us it's time to move on. But if you've lost a significant other, there's no moving on. You never move on. You move forward. You move through. You don't move past. You never put it behind you. The only thing that you can hope to do is to learn how to live with your loss and know that you still have life left to live. My husband died, but I did not. I was fairly young when my husband passed away. I was 43, and so I have a lot of life left to live. And my husband would not want me living the rest of my life sad and wallowing in grief. He would want me to be happy. And not only that, but he would want me to live for him. He would want me to do the things with my children that he didn't get to do. He would want me to experience and visit the places that he didn't get to visit and do the things that he didn't get to do. And so I choose to do those things for him. I am living that life, and I am taking advantage of the life that I have because he doesn't have any more life to live. And so I am doing that for him, for me, for us, for our family, for our children. So you might wonder what qualifications that I have to help anyone come out of their grief and be happy. And I will tell you right now, I'm not a doctor. I am not a counselor. I don't have any medical qualifications or special training to help people, sad people, grieving people, people with problems, people with emotional issues. So I don't claim to have that kind of expertise. What I do have is the experience that you and I share. All of us share. I've lost a spouse. And that means that I've been through a lot of the same feelings, a lot of the same experiences that you have. However, we all grieve differently. We all feel things differently, and we all respond to that grief differently. Our timeline of grief is so different. Some people kind of go quickly through their grief and sort of step-by-step process and sort of find their way out on the other side. Other people seem to get stuck in their grief and almost wear it like a badge of honor. And years go by and they don't ever seem to move out of that low place that they seem to always be in. And they almost get angry at people for suggesting that they might try to move forward and try to feel some happiness. And there's a lot of people that are pretty far in between. As a matter of fact, my husband, my current husband, is also widowed. And he moved pretty quickly through the grieving process. Oh, I can't really say he moved through it, but we met when he was nearly 2 months out from his loss, and we began to date, and it wasn't very long before we were remarried. And so a lot of people were surprised about that because he moved pretty quickly through that process, but he wasn't finished grieving. When we married, I wasn't finished grieving, and neither was he. We'll never be finished grieving. You know that. We kind of helped each other continue through that grieving process and to feel that happiness. So the one thing that I do have, that I am qualified to do, is to share my experiences with you, my feelings about things with you, and my opinions about how I see the world and how I've experienced it and what I've decided to do for myself that has helped me, or things that have not helped me that I can maybe warn you about. That's really where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place that I can share my experience with you and hope that you will feel like maybe you're not alone. You might hear a story that I talk about and say, wow, I remember feeling that. I've felt that before. I've thought about that before. At least I'm not the only one. So I'm not so weird. I'm not so strange. So that's not so odd for me to feel a certain way or to think a certain way or to say a certain thing. And so hopefully when we can come together and share these experiences, we can feed off of each other and develop this community to where we can all collectively help each other to start wherever we are in the grieving process and try to move forward through life and find some happy moments. If that's all it is finding a few happy moments and stringing them together between the sad ones, that still could be a better situation than where you are right now. When we spend time around non-widowed people, nobody knows how to act around us. Nobody knows what to say, especially when we first come back to work or we first come out of the house after we've lost our spouse. Nobody kind of knows how to treat us. They don't want to talk about stuff. And when they do talk about stuff, a lot of times they say things that really piss us off. And we have to remember that they don't know what we're going through. And so it's really hard for them to put themselves in our shoes because they haven't walked in our shoes yet. They would like to see us move on. And sometimes it feels like that when we do finally move on in their eyes or we move forward, it's almost like they want to judge us for doing it on the timeline. But I remember going back to work, and if I ever mentioned my late husband about anything, it was always met with, okay, well, you know that meeting we've got in about an hour? I'm just going to go ahead and, get ready and get a seat, so I'm not going to be late. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Okay, bye. It's like the elephant in the room. It's really uncomfortable. And they're afraid that if you start talking about it, you might break down and start crying, and then they don't know what to do and they don't know how to act. So we got to cut them some slack sometimes and just know that for the most part, they have our best interest at heart. They really just don't know how to act around us, how to talk around us, or what to do. They just bring us food and send us cards and run away. So, and then just hope that they can leave us alone long enough until we get better and over things and we can come back and join the real world. So as far as where you might be in the process, hopefully you are here because you are in a place that you are really ready to allow yourself to be happy. You're tired of grieving all the time. You're tired of being sad all the time. You're tired of feeling these bad feelings, and you really want to get out of that and you want to feel happiness, and you're not really sure how to start. You're not really sure how to do it, and you're not really sure what's appropriate. So hopefully that is where you are. Maybe you're even farther and you consider yourself a happy widow or widower, and you want to kind of share your experiences with others, and that's awesome too. You might be trying to get to that point and you really just don't know what to do next and you're really stuck. You may even be in that point where you are grieving and grieving and grieving, and you're not ready to be happy. You don't want to be happy. You consider yourself married to your spouse still, and you'll never meet another person, and you'll never be happy again, and you're never going to do anything and smile, and in your mind it's almost that angry grief where you want to prove to the world that you were so committed to your spouse that you will never come out of this. I've been in a lot of Facebook groups for widows and widowers, and I do read posts of people that are in that stage of grief. I do think that is a stage of grief, definitely. I don't think it's a stage that you need to stay in. I don't think it's a stage that anyone needs to stay in for the rest of their lives. Hopefully, if you are in that place and you're here, you might be mad about some of the things that we talk about. You might I might say some things that really upset you or that offend you or make you feel like, well, I'm never going to feel that way. So hopefully over time, I can help to encourage you to get to that point where you can give yourself permission to feel joy or to laugh or to have a good time or to get out of bed or to go back to work or to meet new friends or to date or whatever that situation might be. But if you are stuck in grief to the point where you may have been flipped over into the depression stage, you might not even want to get out of it. But I'm telling you right now that you need to. And if you're not ready to hear that, then maybe over time you will. Maybe if you listen enough, you will decide, okay, fine, I'll try it. And I really encourage you, because it's really sad to think about somebody losing their spouse and they spend the rest of their life breathing in and out, but really it's almost like they died along with their spouse because they never can really come out of that grieving state. It is a process, and we're not meant to be stuck in one place. We're meant to move forward and to continue to process through those grieving stages. And so I encourage you to pop back in and watch the videos, and maybe something will resonate with you, and maybe you'll get to that point one day where you're really like, you know what, I'm done crying every day, and I'm ready to be happy. I'm ready to feel some kind of happiness. So when I first entered my original stage of grief, my initial stage of grief, I was lucky, job-wise, that I'm a school teacher. I'm a special ed teacher, and so my husband died in the middle of the summer, or the beginning of the summer. And I didn't have to report back to work for about 5 or 6 weeks after he passed away. So I had that time where I didn't have to take off from work or worry about losing money. But I was young enough. We had 4 children, all still at home. And so I had to continue to raise them. I had to continue to support them. There were some financial issues that were going on that I don't want to share in this video right now, but I may or may not share them down the road. But for several months after he died, we really struggled because of just various things that happen after somebody dies, and paperwork, legal, all that stuff. But I had to continue to work. I didn't have the option to stay home. So I had to stay busy. I had to go back to work. I had to put groceries on the table. I had to pay the car payment. I had to pay the rent. I had to buy clothes for the kids. I had to pay for counseling for all of my children, and that stuff is expensive. And so I stayed busy, and staying busy helped to keep my mind off of my grief. I couldn't sit around and cry all day. I had to go to work. I pretty much went from the grieving process for that 5 or 6 weeks to almost putting it in the back of my mind like a suitcase and zipping it up and putting a lock on it, because I had to go back to work and I had to raise my kids. And so I stayed busy all the time. And I almost put my grief on hold, I feel like, because I just didn't have time. I didn't have time to break down and be sad. And so after a while, I think I realized that I had sort of paused my grieving process. And then I realized that I was ready to kind of continue on. And it meant having to pull a Band-Aid off and feel a few things that I didn't really think about and I hadn't felt in a while, and I really didn't want to feel again, but I had to bring them back up so that I can continue to process it through. And so once I got to that point, I really started feeling really sad for a while. And that's when I decided, I'm done. I want to be a happy person again. I want to be happy, and I want to move forward. And I don't want to be the widow and known by that for the rest of my life. I needed to do some things, and so I did. So I grew up in the South. I still live in the South. And I got my share of bless your heart. Bless your heart. I got lots of bless your hearts and blesseds. And if you are from the South, you really know that that's not always a compliment. But that's basically what had ended up happening to me, is everybody was blessing my heart because of what I'd been through, but I feel like that had become my identity. To everybody at my job who knew me as my husband's wife and had met him and knew our family, suddenly I was the widow. And even if I wasn't all the time in their mind, I felt like I was. I felt like every time I talked to somebody, that's all they were thinking about is, oh my gosh, that's the woman whose husband died. So maybe they weren't thinking that, but that's what I thought about. And that's what I thought they were thinking about all the time. And I felt like I sort of had got stuck in that identity. And wasn't I still a woman? Wasn't I still a mom? Wasn't I still a teacher? Wasn't I still a wife? Wait, no, I wasn't a wife anymore. And it was really tough to know that one day I'm a wife, and within seconds of him not breathing anymore, I was single, if you want to call it that. That's weird. I became a widow, which means I wasn't a wife anymore. And that's a part of my identity that was sliced off of me and thrown in the garbage like that. And I didn't like that, because part of my identity was being a wife. And I missed that. I really liked being a wife. I liked being a mom. I liked being a teacher. It made me safe to live in those labels, I guess. And one of those big labels for me wasn't there anymore. And that was tough. And it got replaced with widow. And I didn't want to be known as that. And another thing I noticed is that every time I drove to work, I drove the same way and I passed the same landmarks, and I had certain thoughts that would pop into my mind when I passed this gas station or this stop sign or this church or this school. And every time I would pass them, I would have the same memory would pop back into my head, and thoughts would come in like, wow, that's where Dallas had her first basketball game, and he's never going to be able to see her play basketball again. And then I would start to cry. And so it got to that point where every morning when I went to work, I was triggered by all these landmarks. And then I'd pull into the parking lot and I'd have to stop and pull myself together and clean myself up and sit and get myself into a better place and put that happy mask on so that I could go to work. Because I felt guilty about burdening my coworkers with my personal problems. So, I put on the happy face when I went to work so that I wouldn't make other people feel uncomfortable with my grief. But it got to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore. It's like I was in this cycle, like clothes in a dryer. I couldn't get out. I couldn't stop. And the only way that I knew to stop that, it's like a circle, merry-go-round or whatever. The only way to stop it and get out of that was to change those surroundings. I changed a lot of things in my life. I moved to a new house. I moved to a new town. I got a job in a different school. That made a huge difference because it allowed me to choose the memories that came to my head. And I got to choose the happy memories. I got to pick what I wanted to remember. And I got to pick the ones that made me smile and made me laugh, and not the ones that made me cry. The other big change that I made for my job was I switched from being a full-time teacher to being a part-time teacher. And that was a tough decision to make because financially it was really hard, but I needed it for myself and I also needed it for my children. My children were struggling and having a tough time. And I can tell you this, if you have children, especially if you have minor children, when you become widowed, raising grieving children is so much harder than grieving yourself. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is that through my process, my grieving process, my living process, my healing process, I did begin to date. And as I mentioned before, I met a man. He is a fellow widowed person. He's a widower. We ended up getting married. We've been married for just over a year now. And I can honestly say that we have helped each other to continue through this grieving process that we all know that never ends. And I can also say that looking back on my marriage to my late husband, there were a lot of times when I could have been nicer to him. I could have let things go that were really small and unimportant that I really kind of focused on and shouldn't have. And I could have just let them roll off my back. They say don't sweat the small stuff, and that's really true. And I have found since I became a widow that almost everything is small stuff. Hindsight on my marriage helps me be a better wife and to not really worry about little things. And if you love somebody, my husband and I are both acutely aware that our days are limited and the time that we have with the person that we're with is not forever. And we feel that because we've both experienced that. And so knowing that I only have a limited number of days left with my husband, I try not to waste any time or any chance to tell him that I love him or any chance to give him a hug and a kiss and make him feel special. So I have a completely different outlook on my marriage now than I had in my marriage before. And I do think that I'm a better wife now than I was to my late husband. So to wrap everything up, just want to let you know that in this journey, you're not alone. And the things that you need to do for yourself in order to grieve and to get through certain points and this process, as long as it is not a danger to yourself or others, that it's okay. Everybody goes through their grieving process differently. We're all unique and we all heal in different ways. I just want to let you know there are people out there who care about you, whether it be in person, whether it be through the internet, from people that you might not have ever met in person. Having that connection to a group of people that have shared a similar experience, that, you know, scientists say that losing a spouse is the #1 stressful event in your life. #1. So people who have experienced that sort of have a kinship together. You know, we have shared a stressful event in our life that has completely changed our lives. And sometimes I feel like there's no way anyone else out there can feel the way I feel or can understand why I'm feeling a certain way if they haven't lost a spouse. That sense of community for us, we all have to help each other through these moments. And so sometimes I'm going to be really down and need someone else to kind of bring me out of it. And sometimes someone else is going to be really down and we can gather around and help that person through it too. And so it's mostly about connecting with other people with similar experiences and knowing that we're not alone, and that whatever days that we have left, our spouses would want us to make the most of that. They don't want us to wallow in our grief. They don't want us to waste our days left on this earth pining away for them and not doing things for ourselves and not taking care of ourselves. To wrap everything up, that hopefully you've got something out of this video that makes you feel like, okay, yeah, that sounds really good. I am ready to be happy, or I'm trying to be happy and I really don't know how. And I wish somebody could tell me, you know, some things that I could do that would help me. And so that's what I want to do, is to try to encourage you to give yourself permission. It is okay. You are allowed to laugh. You are allowed to smile. You are allowed to feel happy, to feel happiness. You are allowed to say that you are a happy widow or widower. It's okay. You're still going to have sad times. You're going to have sad days, sad moments. But if you will give yourself that permission to move to that next place, then you can get there. But mentally, we have to get to that place in our mind where we allow ourselves to do it, because we've punished ourselves long enough in this grieving process. And it's time to move to that next place, and then that next place, and that next place. And eventually get to that point where you can say, I'm a happy person that has sad days. So please join me in this journey together, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up if it had any benefit to you. Also, make sure and hit that bell down there, that notification bell. That will let you know anytime a new video comes out. I've got so many ideas and so many things that I want to share with you. I'm hoping that I can share my experiences with you and either give you ideas of how you can improve, how you can feel better, how you can get happy, or at least let you know that you're not alone and that it's okay. However you feel is okay. And it's going to be okay. Hopefully together, you know, we can all get to that point where we can say that we are happy. So good luck to everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. See you soon. Bye.